Gulf Injustice Podcast, the official podcast of Detained in Dubai with Radha Stirling.
Welcome to the Gulf Injustice Podcast. I'm Radha Stirling, and tonight we're going to be speaking with former Apprentice star Selina Waterman-Smith. The 39-year-old entrepreneur and Apprentice star has been living in glamorous downtown Dubai, where she founded a food delivery company and expanded her events company. But living life in the sun has been somewhat of a roller coaster. She survived her own abduction and gang rape in Dubai and successfully had her assailants prosecuted. Unusual for the United Arab Emirates, where rape victims have been jailed for sex outside marriage. But let's hear from Selina directly about what she thinks about the United Arab Emirates. Selina, thank you very much for joining us. And there might be a lot of people out there who actually don't know your history. So you were on The Apprentice in the United Kingdom. How many years ago was that?
Oh, that was a long time ago. It was in 2015. So we're talking 8 years that I was on TV.
Not too long. Yes.
Not too long. I think some people still remember me. I still get the occasional press about it. But yes, it was quite a while ago.
And then after that completed, you decided to go to Dubai.
Well, actually, I'd already been in Dubai. So I've been living in Dubai in the UAE for 15 years. And I flew back to the UK for The Apprentice. I thought it was a really great opportunity and also a great chance to showcase myself as a businesswoman from the Middle East. So I was really kind of representing Dubai when I went to compete in the UK.
And what attracted you to the Emirates in the first place?
You know what? I was offered a job in Egypt. And I always had loved to travel and live abroad, and Dubai really wasn't on the map back in 2008. But from Egypt, I met a partner and we decided to visit Dubai. We'd heard about it, but we didn't know too much. And we just really stumbled here by chance. And by and large, that was a great decision overall.
So you enjoyed it for a number of years anyway. When you first got there, it was exciting and opportunities. Yeah,
absolutely. I don't have anything bad to say about the Emirates on the whole, or else I wouldn't have lived here happily for 15 years. You know, I have been very proud to call it my home. It's only recent events, I think, that have changed my perception or maybe highlighted something that happens here that shouldn't be happening.
Yes. I mean, you've already experienced something in the UAE, which is justice for when you were actually raped and abducted, and you managed to get your assailants prosecuted. And that's unusual in the UAE, because we've seen over the years women charged with sex outside marriage. So that it's nice to see a little bit of a change in that policy, perhaps at the police level. How hard did you have to push for that prosecution to go through?
Well, honestly, it was difficult in the beginning. And as you know, the British Embassy used to have on their website that women who are victims of sexual assault in the UAE, they advise you not to report it. And they advise you to leave the country and just never speak about it. And that was the advice I had from the embassy. They said, if you want to report this, we can't support you. And I said, well, you know what? I refuse to believe that a country that I have made my home for the last 8 years is so barbaric that it would not defend a woman who was kidnapped from the back of an RTA taxi in a public tourist area. I said
with CCTV. Yes.
With CCTV, and the taxi driver testified that they physically grabbed me from the taxi. I said, I just don't believe that this country is so barbaric. So I think because I pushed, it was very difficult in the beginning with the police, but then when the CID got hold of it, it was a very different matter, and those men were sentenced to 10 years in jail. So first of all, I'm really pleased that those men are no longer on the streets, and they're not going to rape any more women, and their predatory presence has been removed because of my testimony. Yes. So I feel like I had a duty as a woman to report it. But of course, it was very traumatic and stressful going through the whole court case. But I also think that it kind of set a precedent. So from what I understand, how rape cases are handled now in the UAE is completely different. And rape victims are given a chance to speak, and they're not prosecuted as much because of my case. And I've been able to help other women who are raped in the region. So I think if you can turn something really negative into something positive, then it's not as bad. Basically.
Absolutely. I mean, it's fantastic that you got justice in that case and that you weren't incarcerated, because at the time they still had the sex outside marriage laws, I believe. They've only just changed recently.
Yeah,
yes.
every day that I went to court for 9 months, I was told this could be the day that they decide to switch things on you and put you in jail for sex outside of marriage. And it was absolutely terrifying. I was going to court by myself, and I was like, I have to do this. I'm not leaving the country. I'm not running and hiding from anyone. I am going to speak my truth. And fortunately, after 9 months, because of the irrefutable evidence and their confessions, there was really no choice but to jail them for 10 years.
Absolutely. I mean, when you have CCTV evidence and witnesses, it would be difficult not to convict them at that point. And I presume, unless they're Emiratis, I presume that they're going to be deported at the end as well.
They will be deported, yes. So even if they continue to sexually assault women, they certainly won't be able to do so in the UAE. And women in the UAE are safe from those men because I chose to speak up, and I will always speak up.
Exactly. So when did you start your food delivery company?
So I started my first food company in 2016, and it was a British company called Smith's. And Smith's is obviously my family surname, and it's a real kind of nod to British culture. It was quintessential British dishes. It became very popular with all of the Brits living in Dubai because we did all the classics like roast dinners and chip butties. So it was kind of a passion project that I was running alongside my events company, which I'd had for 15 years. But I really wanted to move into food because I was very passionate, and I had ideas for other concepts.
Right, okay. And you were running that for how long? How long was the business in operation?
5 years in total, and I launched 5 restaurants.
Good.
Yeah.
Amazing. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And then obviously we get to the sad part of the story, which is when things got tense in Dubai. You met a business partner, I think he was South African from memory.
So, a South African, sorry.
No, go on. So then he ultimately tried to basically appropriate your business.
Yes,
so tell us.
Basically, he approached me after I'd been in operations for 2 years, and I was operating out of cloud kitchens, and I wanted investment to scale up my operation and get my own central kitchen, and then include more brands under my umbrella of one company. And this person approached me saying that they were an investor, and we agreed that the amount I needed was between $500,000 and $1 million dirhams. And we decided to start negotiating. They took me to a lot of fancy offices. We had meetings in fancy offices of businesses that they claimed they owned. And this person also told me that they were purchasing a gym for millions of dirhams, and that we were going to build a cafe for my health food concept in this gym. And we went to the gym, and we had renderings done of the cafe from a fabrications company. So I was very much convinced in the authenticity of this person and that they were a legitimate investor.
Right. Interesting. Okay, so they came to you. Basically, you developed a friendship, I assume, as well, along these professional lines. And it looks good. It looks like you would have a good future in business together, at least.
Sure. I was all for it. I thought it was going to be great to have a business partner. I was welcoming this man into my life, into my business, showing him all of my talents and my skills and my expertise within the industry, because I thought that's what you did when you're going into business with someone. You're utterly transparent. And I didn't know that he was not being transparent, and that he entered into the entire agreement with me in bad faith, because he wasn't who he said he was.
Do you think, in retrospect, were there any red flags at the time, or are these people just too smooth?
No, there were red flags. But I liken it to the Tinder swindler. You know, there were red flags with her, but he laid the breadcrumbs so carefully. He had a website. He gave her a PAYE slip. He put her on his payroll. He flew in private jets. So probably, even though she felt a bit suspicious, she was kind of bowled over by, you know, what she was being dazzled with. And I think these people are very good in the beginning. They're very convincing, because that is their job. Their job is to lure you in and convince you. and they love bomb you. There was a love bombing phase. I was a bit vulnerable. You know, I'd been through this horrible time. I don't have any parents. I've always worked by myself. He comes in saying, I'm going to invest money. We're going to take this business stellar. I'm going to do all these amazing things for you. It sounds great. Of course, I was completely convinced.
Yes. And as a positive person, I think you are. It's very easy to get excited about this. You know, when people are coming to you with such positivity themselves, it's nice to amplify your own excitement and your own goals and possibilities, really.
Absolutely. So, I was really happy about it at the start.
And then suddenly, I mean, was there a point where suddenly you realized that this man was after your business? He wanted to steal from you. He wanted to misappropriate.
Yeah, although it took about 6 to 8 months for the penny to really drop. And like you said, I think it's because I'm overly positive and overly nice, and it just didn't occur to me that someone was doing something so deceitful behind my back. So he didn't invest the money. He said, hey, let's start with a smaller amount. Let's start with a small amount, like about 10% of what we had agreed as seed money, and we'll see how the relationship goes. And again, me being trusting, I was like, yeah, that makes sense. Why not? Let's test it out. It didn't occur to me that he would use that as an opportunity to gain access to me and my intellectual property. And even that money, that 10%, was almost impossible to get it out of him. The money didn't come as a lump sum. There were dribs and drabs in smaller amounts, like 10,000 dirhams. And that went on for a period of 6 months. And during that 6 months, he was aggressively taking money out of my business. And this was where things started to go wrong, because he switched from being so nice and so supportive to suddenly demanding things from me. He started demanding a salary, telling me he was entitled to that. And I was like, well, hang on. You're an investor. First of all, you're a silent investor. You haven't made the investment yet. This is a trial period. Why would you be entitled to a salary that's almost equal to mine? And when I started saying no to these things, he would become very, very aggressive. And quite often I was left in tears after our encounters, because he would start to kind of threaten me and say, oh, well, you know, you need to think about who you're dealing with, who you're saying no to. I'm the person that has, you know, the keys to the kingdom. Like, who are you, you know, telling no to? And then gaslighting me and saying, oh, it's perfectly normal. You just don't know how big business is, but I should be getting dividends. I was like, dividends? After like 2 months and no money. Yeah. And he had free food for 6 months, 5 days a week. There was money from food that was supplied to a gym, the gym that he claimed he owned, and they never paid me. They said they gave the money to him, which he denied. He then asked me for 50,000 dirhams to invest in his friend's company. Then he asked me to rent office space in his friend's company because they weren't doing well. And again, when I would say no to these things, he would start saying, oh, well, I've heard this about you. I've heard that you're, you know, difficult to work with. And now I'm seeing it up close. I guess this is why you're alone and why no one's invested in you. So it was so emotionally and psychologically manipulative. Like, it makes me feel a bit sick when I look back on it, because now I can't imagine letting someone do that to me. And I actually had like a nervous breakdown after 3 months, which was because I was working so much. I was scaling this business. The money wasn't there that was promised. He was standing over me on the sidelines, taking money out and eating my food, and then putting pressure on me to give him money. And I think it all just became too much. Like, I had an actual medical nervous breakdown, and he still wouldn't give me the investment. So it was although the company was so successful, it was a really dark period in my life. And I've had to go through quite a lot of therapy to acknowledge that it was a form of abuse, what he was doing to me. Sorry.
Indeed. No, it's hard. I mean, it's years, really, wasn't it? Years of abuse, and it has been ongoing.
5 years now.
5 years, that's a long time. And I think people don't realize that this is actually quite a common thing. And obviously not just in the UAE, but the UAE seems to attract, you know, people from all different walks of life, and a lot of career criminals, a lot of fraudsters who think that they're going to somehow be able to make money out of the, you know, the Middle East and the gold and cryptocurrency and all of the different people that live in Dubai. So I think Dubai is quite targeted by people who are already criminals in their own countries, and they want to escape and come to the UAE and try it on there with some expats. So I think it's quite a common thing that they partner up with people, invest or pretend to invest or enter these arrangements, and then they often manipulate, unfortunately, very underdeveloped laws in the UAE that don't seem to protect people who are being targeted in this way. And I think that's a huge problem.
I agree. Sorry to interrupt you, but yeah, it's
No.
it's the lack of protection around it, because when you said the final straw in our arrangement came when he asked me for a visa. So then we realized, myself and my lawyer realized, that he didn't actually have a trade license to operate as an investor and was operating illegally. And that is criminally, according to the law, that's criminally fraud. So he's wrongly approaching women, and he's told me he likes to work only with women. So he clearly targets women to do this. But if that's a criminal offense, where is my protection as someone who has been preyed upon by someone who's working here illegally, who's never owned a business, never had a trade license? It makes no sense to me.
And I mean, I've looked at your case for our listeners. I've looked at your case. I've looked at a significant amount of evidence showing exactly what he's done to you, and showing that in hard black and white. So the police really should be at that point taking action against him. And I think it's atrocious that they haven't. I mean, I know it was hard enough to get the prosecution for rape, but I think business cases is something else, because there's a lot of manipulation, and sometimes it does actually come down to corruption, not necessarily in your case, but in a lot of other cases. And sometimes they actually work in concurrently with these people who are trying to exploit or extort.
Really? Wow.
Sadly.
Maybe that's what's going on here.
Well, I certainly hope not. But I mean, it is easy for people to go over there, to take people's businesses, to take their money and try to put them in jail under a false allegation, just so that they can absolutely get everything that they have while they're in prison, or at least while they're in detention, even if it's just for a couple of weeks at the police station. It gives them the opportunity to essentially steal and rob from their business, from their house, from their own bank accounts, and take those criminal cases. And the one thing in the UAE, if someone takes a criminal case against another person, it tends to be taken at face value. The claimant, the complainant in the first instance, or whoever makes the first move, is often taken more seriously by the police than the respondent. So unfortunately, what you have there is, if these people are wise to this fact, and most of them are, most of them have done this multiple times before.
Their business, yeah.
It's their business. So that they quickly go down to the police station, quickly make a false allegation, and then they seem to be able to get away with whatever they want to do. So that to me is astonishing. So 5 years now, do you think you're any closer to resolving this?
No, I think that he's kind of got the bit between his teeth. And I think that because he's had so much from me financially, and this is obviously meeting some sort of emotional need in him to kind of terrorize me and harass me and threaten me, why would he stop? Until the authorities actually do something, what incentive is there for him to leave me alone?
Do you think that he's doing this to other women as well at the same time?
Well, the woman that owned the gym that he claimed he owned, that someone else told me he never owned, it was again a similar deal. He was going to help her with her business. I don't know what happened there. I can only speculate, but she disappeared from the country. Right. She vanished overnight. She didn't close her business. She didn't fire anybody. From what I understand, all the staff turned up and she had vanished, deleted all of her social media. So obviously whatever happened between them wasn't good.
So what do you think that you've lost out of this, or suffered out of this? What do you think you suffer? I mean, suffering 5 years, obviously the emotional stress and everything else, but there's been other financial and other losses that you've suffered as well.
Yeah.
What do you think the toll has been?
Because he was supposed to invest and he didn't, and then he set up a rival company, and I can't obviously accuse him of copying my business, but I can tell you that it was almost identical. So the name, apart from one word, was the same. The health food concept, the menu, I have screenshots of all of his menus. And he was working with his own investor and also did a multi-brand kitchen concept, of which I was the first person in the UAE to do. So it made sense to me that his investment offer was never real. And probably from the beginning, he always planned to gain access to me long enough to replicate or to be inspired by my concepts. And then he continued to threaten and harass me and cyberstalk me for a period of years, which I did go to the police about in 2020 because he'd been sending me emails saying, I'm going to ensure that everything in your life personally and professionally goes wrong. I'm going to have you arrested. I'm going to have you jailed in the UAE. I'm going to have you denied a visa from the United States. And I found all that, like, that was very terrifying for me. And it's also very triggering because of what I've been through at the hands of men, like having these barrage of threats about getting revenge. And I don't really understand why, because he didn't invest in my business and I was offering him the keys to my kingdom. And in the end, because of my mental health, I decided to close my business, which was valued at 12 million dirhams at the time that I closed it. So I lost 5 years of hard work. I lost 12 million dirhams. I lost my health. I've developed all sorts of health problems, autoimmune diseases, and I've had anxiety, and PTSD has just come flooding back. But I felt like at the time it was almost an empowered decision, because I thought if I close this business, it's done. He will leave me alone. He's got his rival company. Enjoy, have your rival company. I made a mistake choosing you as my partner, but I just want this to end. And even after that, he's still coming after me, and he's still coming after me and making false allegations. And he, obviously, you know about this, we've spoken about this, he waited several years for me to travel. And as soon as I traveled, he put in an allegation that I had bounced a check.
Yes.
And I've never written him a check. But this allegation, he also gave the authority...
That's absolutely shocking. Number one, that he waited for you to be outside of the country so that you wouldn't be notified of it. And he even, if I recall, gave a wrong telephone number for you to the police.
And email address.
So they couldn't notify you. So when you were, I think it was in the UK, and then you went back to Dubai, and you were notified at the point of entry at immigration.
No, I wasn't even notified then. I came back into the UAE and the whole thing was proceeding. So even when I was in the UAE and I applied for a new Emirates ID, a new visa, and I renewed the lease on my apartment, for some reason, at no point could anybody notify me that this thing was ongoing. And given the level of harassment I'd had for years, it's very, very strange that during this time, when this allegation was made, I had complete radio silence from him and his team. So it seems to me that he did everything in his power to conspire to ensure that I didn't know about this allegation, because as you've said, if you don't show up to defend yourself, the claimant party is automatically has the case in their favor, even if there's no evidence. So I've never written him.
And you'll get a conviction in absentia, absolutely. And if you're away too long and you don't even know about the conviction, you lose the ability to appeal it.
Yes, so we didn't know about it. I couldn't appeal. I'm not allowed to appeal. I'm not allowed to share any evidence. I'm not allowed to discuss it with anyone, even when I have been down on multiple occasions to ask for, respectfully, any evidence at all that I bounced a check, or I think he's tried to style it that he lent me money. They have actually said to my face, in the case between a man and a woman, the man doesn't need any evidence.
I was just about to ask you whether you thought this, because you said just before that he has committed a number of cybercrime violations in his text messages to you. And I mean, we've seen people arrested for cybercrime violations that are so minuscule and irrelevant over the years. So it's surprising that the police aren't prosecuting him. I mean, we had that woman, she sent a text message to her flatmate and she was arrested and deported. But you're reporting this man, and the police aren't even taking it seriously. Do you think that's something to do with the fact that you're the accuser, a woman?
I do, because it doesn't seem to be taken seriously at all. And although the CID have actually been very supportive since this happened, or there's not much they can do, it has to go through the police. And the police were like, yes, it's a cybercrime. Yes, he's breaking the law, but oh, it's a big deal and you'll have to go to public prosecution and this will take time. So it's better for you to just ignore him. And, and I wanted to believe that back in 2020 as well. We don't want to make drama. We want to move on. So yes. I kind of believed them. But I think that it's a mistake when anyone is reporting abuse or harassment for people not to take the victim seriously, because this is how it's escalated. If he had been arrested then and had a criminal case against him for cybercrime, I wouldn't be in this position now. But he's almost been allowed to act with complete immunity from the law. And he's just getting away with it time and time again. And he's still demanding money from me now. Now that he's got this allegation through, there's now another demand for 300,000, or he's going to file new complaints against me. So it's I don't even know what to say about it. It's so terrifying to be like a sitting duck for this man to just do whatever he wants to, and there's no protection for me as a woman at all.
I mean, when you think about it, he came in, he stole your whole idea. He gave a few thousand, and 10,000 dirhams for everyone is around £2,500 or thereabouts. So he's given very little into the business, and he's taken a lot. He's taken absolutely more than he's given. And then he's taken the concept of the business, the intellectual property, the menus, and everything else as well, and abused the legal system, abused the whole penal system, essentially, by waiting for you to leave the country, by giving false emails and telephones to the police and not letting you defend yourself, and then trying to use that to extort, essentially, further money out of you. It's difficult because while you're in the UAE, you're facing this man and you're not getting enough protection. I'm assuming that the British Embassy hasn't been very helpful.
They've just said the same thing they said to me when I was sexually assaulted, that they don't get involved in criminal cases. So you're very much on your own. And it's a very dog eat dog culture. So even though some people from the court and some of the police have said to me it's fraud what he's done, and some people have said, we're really sorry for you because we can see that this case is not how it's presented, but nobody actually wants to take action. It seems like men don't like to call out bad behavior of other men. It's like they're all together, oh, tough luck, it's happened now, you have to pay him. And I'm like, but don't I have any rights to evidence? Don't I have any rights to request evidence against me? Surely a testimony cannot be enough. Any man anywhere can just go and make an allegation against a woman and take her whole business or take everything from her bank account. Like, surely it can't be that easy, because that's not in line with the UAE's PR around female entrepreneurship. It says it's a supportive place.
That's exactly it, isn't it? Yes. And I mean, this has been 5 years of your life, essentially. How do you feel about the UAE now? If he left the UAE, would you rather stay there, or would you rather go, say, to the UK or somewhere else?
Honestly, I don't know. I think I would stay here because my life is here and my clients and my business and my friends, but I will only stay here if I feel safe. And at the moment, I don't feel safe. So
what would it take for you to feel safe? Because let's say this man leaves the country, would you feel safe then? Or do you think that perhaps there should be a change in process, a change in the way that the police deal with these kind of cases, maybe a policy reform at the higher levels to protect entrepreneurs? Because clearly you were attracted to the UAE. Lots of people who have also been attracted, starting up businesses, expats. And when they see your case or your situation, they're going to be thinking, is it safe for me to be in the UAE? I could get targeted equally by someone else and not taken care of.
Definitely, I agree with you. I think there should be some sort of reform, because if it's so easy for predatory types to prey on women in business, then this could be happening to other women, and maybe they're just not speaking out about it. So I think, firstly, if there's a complaint of harassment criminally, that should always be taken very seriously, because there's a pattern with domestic violence and women who are murdered by their partners and all of those statistics. It starts with harassment. So I think it wasn't taken seriously there. And secondly, I think that allowing allegations to happen against people in absentia without evidence, I'm not here to criticize other countries' legal systems, but obviously, as I have experienced it, I do find that absolutely shocking. And I can't wrap my head around it, especially when I have irrefutable evidence that I am completely innocent of any wrongdoing. I have a clean record here for 15 years. It's so damaging to my reputation. And there's this shrugging the shoulders attitude of, well, he got in there with his life first, so tough luck. I mean, how can that be the law?
But, I've seen also people make criminal complaints very recently, and then they themselves quickly leave the country, so they can't be called as a witness. So the criminal complaint just stays open. It's never closed because they never come back to the country to close it. And I mean, that's astonishing as well. Exactly. So I think these absentia convictions are wrong. You can go down to the police station and make an allegation against someone and say someone's, offended you or something like that. And if the police say, oh, she's not in the country, they can hold the file open until you come back, and they can question you, interview you at that point. But they shouldn't be charging without being able to talk to you. They shouldn't be convicting you,
No,
you or
or
people, as
anyone.
I'm saying.
Yeah.
Absolutely. They shouldn't be convicting people in absentia. They should wait until you're in the country and then take you through a trial where you would get the opportunity
Absolutely.
to present your evidence.
Or at least ask the person that made the complaint for evidence, like how on earth he has been able to file a bounce check complaint against me when there is no check. There's no check. I've never written him a check. He doesn't have a copy of the check. When I go down to the police, they ask me for a copy of the check, and I'm like, this is preposterous. How can this even be happening? But yeah, I think you're right. People are essentially weaponizing the UAE legal system
Yes.
a way to get revenge on people or extort money from them. And I'm surprised that the UAE isn't more concerned about this, because really he's taking advantage of them. He's lying. He's put in a statement that's perjury. Is perjury not a crime here? Do they want people in their country committing fraud and perjury? Surely not.
Absolutely, that's a good term. They are weaponizing the police force. They're weaponizing the justice system because it doesn't have those safeguards installed yet. And that's a huge risk to investors. You see all of these cases ending up on television and in the media, and it's discouraging to investors and discouraging to tourism. So it's in their best interest to fix this problem. And it's been just so abused and misused over the past 15 years that I've been running this organization. It would be fantastic to see some genuine improvements in that area. I haven't seen them yet, and I really
No.
want to.
It's got to be happening, because the UAE in general is so progressive in so many other areas that the legal system is kind of the last dinosaur that needs to go through some sort of technical and compliance overhaul, because as I said, even though this has happened, I still have people in CID who I'm friendly with, who've been helping me, who've been saying that this situation is just absurd. So there is acknowledgement in some areas, and it's not like the whole police force and CID are bad. It's just this has been a particularly bad series of events, and there's only one person that's really responsible for them, which is this man. But I was detained last year over this situation.
Yes.
And the CID said to me, look, there's this bounce check case. Can you pay this money because there's a complaint? And I said, no, thank you. And they said, what do you mean, no, thank you? And I said, with all due respect to the UAE, this is a miscarriage of justice. I don't owe this person any money. I certainly never wrote them a check. And if you want to detain me, you're most welcome, but I won't be paying further funds to this person. And they released me. So I think it's pretty obvious to anyone that spends any time with me that I'm not guilty of whatever he's claiming. And there are people that are on my side, but they're not the decision makers or the ones that are able to overturn this miscarriage of justice.
I mean, to me, if you're out of the country and you were convicted in absentia, it does happen in a lot of different countries. Usually when you come back to the country, or at the first time that you're notified about an allegation or a conviction, at the first time that you're notified, that's when the appeal window would start. So you would get that, I think it's, 3 weeks or whatever to lodge an appeal.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so that would be, I think, a step in the right direction in itself. At least you'd have a trial. You wouldn't have that sort of weaponization with the convictions in absentia. So do you have a plan going forward now?
I think I have to laugh so that I don't cry, because I have to try and keep a positive spin on this. Like, obviously, I'm alone in the country. I don't have any family helping me out, and I'm trying to run a business with these restrictions on me and under this terrible amount of stress. So I'm just really trying to manage my life in a way that is beneficial to my mental health. And I have no idea what to do about this situation. Like, you have tried to negotiate with him as well, and he seems very proud of what he's achieved, and there's obviously now new demands for more money. So I really can't pay any further funds, knowing that he's going to use that money to continue to make my life a nightmare. His lawyer, I've been in touch with his lawyer a few times, and I've said, can he sign a document that says that he will never contact me again, and he will stop harassing me and stalking me and threatening me. And I've said that I will even pay money for this. So it's almost like I'm paying for my own restraining order, because restraining orders don't exist here. So I'm prepared to pay him on the condition that he will leave me alone, and he still declined. So that should tell you what sort of person he is, that he's not interested in the money. What he wants is free reign to abuse me at will.
Interesting. Yes. And so is there any hope that you have that the UAE might step in on this matter?
Well, I think if I continue to speak out about it, which I'm going to do, obviously, we've been in touch with for a long time, we've been speaking to the British press. And so far I've declined to take that route, because I'm hoping to resolve it privately, and I'm hoping that he will be reasonable. And I also haven't released his name, because I know that would be extremely damaging for his reputation to have, what he's done out in the international press. Once something is in the public domain, you can't take it back. I have no control over what happens if that was to go ahead and the tabloids were to start reporting on it. So perhaps this interview and some other podcasts that I'm going on and some other press around it will get the attention of the right person within the UAE, who can look at this case and say, okay, this is ridiculous. We need to dismiss it. This lady is innocent of any wrongdoing, and we will take the necessary criminal steps against the perpetrator.
I agree. I think in this case, it needs someone higher up in the UAE government or authorities to let the police know, right, we want to solve this case. Let's have a look at the evidence. Has there been a miscarriage of justice? Let's reverse this. And I think that's definitely possible. And certainly the perpetrator should really withdraw, and I think perhaps drop any cases he might have against you that we don't even know about, or any harassment, any legal harassment should be withdrawn. And hopefully this will be a lesson to him. If he doesn't do it, hopefully justice will come for you.
I hope so. Sorry, I'm laughing again. I don't know why I'm laughing. It's just I feel like I'm still in shock that this even happened to me, and it's been 5 years, and I am just so anxious, like, all the time, because I just don't know when it's going to end. Sorry. So it's very difficult, but yeah, I do have hope that somebody will just look at this and do the right thing. And or at least show me the check that I bounced, show me any proof of this at all, because it's not just about the money. It's also so upsetting to have someone make false allegations towards you,
yes,
when I've literally done nothing wrong to this person except offer him to work with me and offer him a slice of my business. And what he's done over the last 5 years is just completely unconscionable. Like, I don't know what part of him is driving this behavior, but as a strong businesswoman, it's very hard to say that you're frightened of someone or that you've been hoodwinked by someone. But that is the situation completely. Like, he has completely outmaneuvered me at every opportunity to commit these crimes against me. And yeah, I just want to be at peace. I just want to know that I'm safe from him.
I mean, you've got to remember these career criminals, and they are fraudsters. That is what they do. Their whole life, their whole job is to manipulate people and to extort them and to harass them. And it's just not even in the kind of mindset that a normal person would have when going about their life, is it? I mean, these are sort of the narcissistic personalities that everyone talks about. It's not a normal human being who thinks this way or acts this way. So you are dealing with a sort of sinister person in this case. And it's so easy. It's very easy to be duped by these charming career criminals.
Yeah. No, I think so. I agree.
Yeah. But the UAE police, I really do think, should protect people from this kind of fraud, because I do think Dubai is a target for this type of personality and this type of fraudster. I see it all the time, of course, with all of my different clients, and I have so many people coming forward with stories similar to this. And I think the UAE police need to provide protection for the genuine expats who are there to create businesses and entrepreneurship and do wonderful things for the country being overshadowed by this darkness. And I think the UAE police need to take that so seriously in order to preserve the reputation, encourage more people to come to the country.
Yeah, I think that's a very good way to look at it. I mean, ultimately, I've been doing business here for 15 years and I was on The Apprentice, and I was very proudly sort of representing myself as a businesswoman in Dubai. And I've held multiple trade licenses. I've had multiple businesses. I'm regularly featured in the local press. I go on podcasts and radio to talk about female entrepreneurship. But it's a real shame that I'm kind of being so let down when, as a businesswoman, I have run into a problem, and I've run into a problem to which I'm completely innocent, and there's just absolutely no support whatsoever, and no effort to help me.
Absolutely stonewalled. And yes, as you touched on, you think that, you know, being a woman does have something to do with it. It's just like there's also racism that's prevalent throughout the judicial system. So we've seen that exemplified. We've seen that reported on by Human Rights Watch and various organizations. But you're definitely at a disadvantage as a woman, or perhaps as an African. So there's different levels of seriousness where the police, you know, take your word seriously.
Sure.
And actually are motivated enough to do something about it, because I think half of them are just lazy. They just don't want to bother to do anything, and sort of, you know, mañana attitude. So
Right.
you've got that, and then you've got the sort of prejudice. Well, you know, we had a man reporting you. We'll take the man's word for it. So we don't really care about your report. Why don't you come back another day and harass someone else? So they try to deflect you as much as possible, so that you get fatigued, so that you get tired. You don't want to go back to the police constantly asking them to help and being turned away.
That is very astute, Radha. That is definitely my experiences.
Yes.
And I know that's the experiences of other people. And even my friends that are local have said, if you want to go to the police station, you will probably need a male Arabic speaker to go with you, or else you probably won't be taken seriously. And with the criminal cases that we can potentially file against him, I have been advised to go through a lawyer for that.
Yes.
They've said a lawyer needs to go on your behalf and file the criminal complaints or follow up with the harassment. And, you know, with regards to that, again, without criticizing the UAE, I did think about this. And we have to remember that we also don't pay tax in this country, and it is quite a small government. So that would be something I would say to anyone coming over here, that if you come over here to do business, yes, the rewards can be quite big, but you have to also understand that any matter that happens to you, any sort of crime or fraud or anything else, you'll probably have to pay a lot of money to deal with it privately, because you don't have access to the same services that you would in the UK. That's what tax is for.
Right. Yes, good point. And the legal fees are hefty in the UAE. So a lot of people
Yeah.
a lot of people couldn't afford to hire a lawyer just to make a criminal complaint for them.
No, it's dog eat dog. Like I said, it's kind of like, you're lucky if you get through and you can make money and you can do really well. But if something goes wrong, chances are you're pretty screwed. things will not work out. And even if you file cases, I mean, as a business owner, I've had to file cases against people. It's the cost of doing business, and I've always been successful in the courts. But there was an occasion where I filed a case against a landlord a few years ago, and I won, but I never received any money. And a lot of people are also in that position. There's something very strange where, when you've won a case and you've technically been awarded the money, there's a disconnect between the court actually getting the money from the other party. And there's a lot of people in that position. Then you lose your legal fees and you lose the amount that you're claiming. And if this runs into millions and millions of dirhams, this can destroy your business, right? If you win a case but you never get the money, how can you operate?
I've seen people try to enforce judgments that they've had, and they could be for millions of dirhams, or just a few 100,000, or maybe just 10,000. It seems practically impossible to enforce those judgments. I think what they hope for is that once the judgment has been awarded, the person will want to pay it off so that they can have the travel ban removed. And apart from that, the police don't really want to get involved, or the courts don't really want to get involved in actually repossessing their assets or freezing their bank accounts and taking the money from there necessarily, unless it's a high profile case. So you have people who have civil judgments against them, and they've been stuck in the UAE for perhaps 15 years, not able to pay those civil judgments, and but they've got no bankruptcy there. So they're not going to go bankrupt. There's no mechanism to discharge the debt, whether it's through your cash, your assets, or through bankruptcy. So it kind of just ends up in no man's land frequently.
It just becomes a mess. You're right. From working in this situation and from hearing stories from other people, there are those who've had civil cases against them and they've been executed and they've lost their access to banking. They can't renew their visa. They can't get a job. They can't leave the country. They have an arrest warrant. So then it completely removes any of their resources to which they would be able to earn money and repay the money. So it's almost like completely counterproductive. And I think a lot of people are in this position, especially those like me that weren't aware of anything happening. It catches you out. If you're caught out and you wake up and your bank account's been frozen and you can't leave the country, realistically, what are you going to do?
It seems to be unequal enforcement, though. I mean, you look at those people who've had their bank accounts frozen, they're homeless on the streets, they can't pay their debts, they can't pay the civil judgment. They're in trouble. But then I have other cases where, people have like $1 million a claim against someone and it just never gets enforced. Every time they try to enforce it through the court just turns around and says, give them another couple of months, give them another couple of months. And this was going on for, in this example, 5 years. So it's selective enforcement of these civil judgments. That's interesting and that's disturbing, actually, because it's giving perhaps prominent businesses, government, ordained businesses, friends, more powerful people, a lot more power than the average person would have in that situation.
Is that what you think it is? The reason for the selective, like implementation of execution? Because there is no consistency with it. As we said, there's some people that are guilty and you can't get an execution on them. And then in my case, it's a check bounce case with no check. The execution was issued within 5 days. And one of my Arabic lawyers said never in 15 years has he seen a case like this. So it just begs belief. First of all, how was this even organized when there's no check? And then how was everything done so swiftly? Why was it's mind-boggling. Like, no one can explain this.
There's just inconsistency even in the sentencing of criminal charges, but there's inconsistency absolutely in the enforcement. It could be fast, it could be slow, it could never happen, or it could be immediate and they seize everything unfairly. So it's random. I think there is a lot of influence and a lot of, is it someone with WASTA? Is it a VIP? Is it an important company? Is their lawyer prominent? Does their lawyer have friends? Is a lot like the network as well. So are they able to push it through?
A lot of them are related, right? It's a very small community. The courts are only Arabic, only GCC nationals. Most of the lawyers are local. So I guess they all support and communicate one another and they help each other on cases, and they don't also want to criticize a judge or someone else and say that their decision is wrong. That's why I think appeals are so hard to get and decisions are so hard to overturn. So it's kind of very insular, their community.
So definitely we need equal justice. That's one thing, whether it's criminal cases, civil cases. We've definitely seen that. Everyone knows that, someone could be, as they were, charged with torture. I don't know whether you remember that Afghani man who was run over by someone in a 4-wheel drive, and that went to court and he was basically let off. So depending on your personal WASTA, depending on whether you're an Emirati or are you from the Gulf, which country are you from, that can have an impact on the kind of justice you can get through the civil courts or the criminal courts. And then we have all of these other factors as well, like who knows whom, which lawyer is friends with which judge, which prosecutor. There's just so many factors, and that needs to just be tidied up, because you need to be able to predict the same outcome for the same people in the same situation.
You'd think that there would be a little bit more consistency.
Exactly. Or same outcome for everyone, not just exactly. So anyway, few things to think about for the UAE for sure. And let's hope that your situation can be resolved soon and that you'll be free to travel again, enjoy your businesses and your peaceable enjoyment of your living conditions, and enjoy your lifestyle.
After having to defend myself already against sort of, a really horrendous situation, it's really disappointing and stressful that I'm in this position again. And I would really just like a quiet life, believe it or not. I don't want to have to keep being an activist for women's rights, but again, I have to until this is resolved.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much for joining us, and we will talk again soon. And let's really hope that this works out for you, because you've been through 5 years of, I'm sure it's up and down, but a lot of hell in there as well. So thanks for joining us and talking about it.
No problem. Thank you, Radha.
Thank you for listening to the Gulf Injustice podcast.